6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
That's the best you can do.
Tower clear.
My asshole leaks. I'm constantly plugging leaks in my asshole.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome in for episode 2 of Course Correction. So, yes, we have a mission patch, as we were discussing in chat. Hercules, take a note. So the mission patch now. The reason there's a shuttle and not a Falcon Heavy is my foundation in space is the shuttle program. Not much, how you doing? Glad to hear those as well. My foundation in space is the shuttle. I can't shake the fact that I like SSTOs. The Space Monkey, that's just... I love that line in Fight Club, and it just had to be there. If we weren't already Spartans, we'd probably be something like Space Monkeys at this point. But you will see on the left-hand side of your screen the agenda for tonight. We have a lot of things. What I've done is I've actually, instead of using an outline, I have presented this in a very media-embedded slideshow so that I can talk through it with you on the screen. You guys will understand what I'm doing, what I'm talking through, without me having to look over to the side the whole time. I can look straight. Yeah, Space Force is on there. On that note, we'll get to it later in the show as well, but I'm producing this both for Mixer and the VOD. You have questions or you want a topic covered, go to the Discord channel. Go to BOSA, go to Discord server, go to the BOSA channel, and do what Dustin did, and put a question in there. And he wanted to know what Space Force is, and we're going to get to that. Two of the notes. This came, and it's meaningful to me. This is the mission patch from Nusantara Satu, which was the very first launch we live streamed and watched as a community. And I really wanted one because of that, and I have one now. It's going back up on my wall with my SpaceX patches. The other thing is this came, and I don't know if you can read it, but it says Fixer down there, which I'm super stoked about. Finally, it arrived. So in any event, first up tonight, well, we'll get to the whole thing because I have a nice summary page and everything. First up tonight is MS-12, the Expedition 59 launch. We're going to review it, the docking and the egress especially, but we'll go through the whole thing. We're going to go over the FY 2020 White House budget proposal. There is a lot that is floating around. There's a lot of clickbait articles floating around on this, and I wanted to clear up some of the things you may be hearing about SLS especially, but some of the other programs that have been affected by it. We'll go and touch on Lunar Gateway, which is kind of a nice segue from that topic. We'll do What is Space Force from Dustin. We'll give you a quick update on Beresheet, where it's at. We'll talk about Opportunity's last view. We'll also go over the Delta IV WGS-10 recap. We did not watch the launch on Friday night because I had a hard stop at 8 o'clock, and it launched at 8:25 after 3 pad problems were cleared. We will talk about OSIRIS-REx, which should also make Dustin happy because it's a lot like Hayabusa 2. We'll go over upcoming launches and a few other things at the end. So, was it last Thursday night?
You put the boom boom into
Sweet
my
baby
heart.
Cthulhu. Yes, T for teen. The reason it's on T for teen is I feel like if a high school kid wants to walk in here and ask questions, I should facilitate that. These streams have been a little bit more adult in tone in terms of maturity. I don't have a problem with people being who they are, or all of us maintaining the tone we've always had, but I do not want to cut off a kid who may be potentially interested from coming in and asking questions. But they come in here and say play Fortnite, drop the hammer on them, because it's no. But Thursday last week, we watched MS-12 take off from Baikonur. It took Nick Hague, Alexei Ovchinin, and Christina Cook is how you pronounce her last name. They took an expedited route, 6 hours, 4 orbits to get to the ISS. They joined the existing crew of Anne McClain, Station Commander Cosmonaut Oleg Kononenko, and David St. Jacques of Canadian Space Agency. So this is the cool thing I can do now, right? This is what I've done, is instead of me clicking out and going to video, I can actually start playing the video, and I can make it big just like that. I'm special. So I'm actually going to fast forward this to about the minute mark when the launch takes place. And this is a replay for those of you who are here.
Command issued for ignition.
But this is the launch that happened last Thursday.
Second umbilical tower separated. Booster ignition.
Engine turbo pumps at flight speed. Engines at maximum thrust, lift off.
And liftoff. We have liftoff of Nick Hague, Christina Cook, and Alexei Ovchinin. Now on
I remember
their way to
when
the
we watched
International
this,
Space Station.
I was very nervous until the booster separated from the main stage 2, because that's what screwed up Nick Hague and Alexei Ovechkin and the first time they went up back in October. Because if you remember, during that broadcast, we talked about how they actually had an in-flight abort. And yeah, they have balls of steel. And it led to us and asking about emergency launch systems and how they actually separate capsules and things like that, which we talked about Friday. The rule about 18 plus is still in place for the Discord. That's not changing, because there's just way too much nonsense in there.
Copy all. This is Burlock 1. Everything is nominal.
That was the launch, and they go to the CGI graphic pretty quickly after this, so we'll bounce back out of the video. We'll come back to this, which I need to make full screen again. It's the only tricky part. Really? Full screen? Don't want to go full screen? Great. We'll just pop back over here and do this then. So that was the launch. So Expedition 59 of the ISS began as soon as they docked, because it went from a 3-person crew to the full complement 6-person crew. Later on this year, when McClain, was it St. Jacques and Kononenko, when they come back down, it'll become Expedition 60 when it goes back down to a 3-person crew. But back on that point, back in October, Hague and Ovechkin, they went up, and one of the S1 boosters failed to separate from the fuselage of the main core, and because of that, the Soyuz aborted, and the tower pulled them off. And we went over Friday how that works. But essentially, it's a booster rocket that pulls the freed capsule up and away from the stage, and then they actually didn't have enough power on the tower at the time. They had to use the Soyuz's engine to get totally clear. When they abort, do they fly it, or the mission? It's automated. They can fly it if they have to, but almost everything in space is fly by wire now. So, Dr. Deck, thank you for the host. What we're talking about alerts, because one just came up. You'll see a button now down at the bottom that says "Feed Fix?" ? If you're hungry, or if you think I'm hungry, you can actually hit that button and send me food once a show now.
These pandas are here to party.
How's it going, Doc? How you doing? Well, this was docking.
You're looking at a live view of the Soyuz MS-12 vehicle looking down at the Earth now. The Soyuz getting some preliminary telemetry, communicating with the International Space Station, looking at just under 18 kilometers now from the space station. The space station itself just over Indonesia. Getting some of the first views from the Soyuz vehicle itself.
0325.
You can see the crosshairs pointing right towards the outline of the International Space Station.
14.4 meters per second.
What is all that on the screen?
But focus on the bottom left. That is the range and the range rate. You can see
the range is 8.12 kilometers at 14.12 meters per second.
Is approaching the International Space Station. Now just about to cross under 8 kilometers from the station at a rate of just under 14 meters per second.
I like showing you guys the end of the mission that we start. It's not conducive to do it in a 5-hour stream, but I do like showing you guys what happens after they go up.
Space station tracking 265 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean just south of the coast of New Zealand. Good readouts from the crew. The Soyuz vehicle itself just under 2 kilometers from the International Space Station. The rate at this time has slowed to under 5 meters per second.
Do you see on the side the what would be cardinal east and west on this craft? You can see the solar panels barely. It's really awesome that ISS has cameras that can pick this thing up from this far away.
Now we have
great views of the Soyuz itself from the high-definition cameras.
There are people who deny that the Earth is round, so I'm sure there are people that deny we have people in space.
The space station itself right over the southern...
One thing that's interesting to note, you don't get a good look at this during launch, is look at the Soyuz when it comes in. It's not capsule-shaped like you would anticipate from an American or a Western design. And people like to stay dumb for sure.
The external high-definition viewing cameras.
It's a go.
So on the bottom of the craft right there is a high-gain antenna, a parabolic high-gain antenna.
Command was sent.
What's always interesting to me, especially playing Kerbal and watching, is
ahead of the timeline,
the distance relative. Like, see how steady that is? But look how fast Earth is going underneath that.
Issuing a final approach earlier than scheduled.
I'm observing the approach. It's now 197 meters. Its range 063 is the closing.
Now 0.192 kilometers, closing at 81 meters per second.
Good. Soyuz and the International Space Station about to cross the Terminator line. Still should have a little bit of sun illuminating the spacecraft. Less than 50 meters from the International Space Station at this time.
Look how old that thing looks.
The 13, the 17, S11.
There was an interesting article I read today, actually, that talks about the validity of Soyuz and Roscosmos as they move into the commercial age of flight. I do plan on bringing some of that information next week. So they're over the Terminator now. The light you see reflecting off of the Soyuz is all coming from ISS.
The range is 20 meters.
What you want?
What's up, Skinja?
11 meters per second. The crosshairs have been aligned. There is a slight...
So unlike Crew Dragon, this has to be birthed.
Crosshairs.
So 0.018 kilometers, closing at
The range is 15 meters.
11 meters per second.
Copy.
This is MGS-12, which contains the crew for Expedition 5960 on Soyuz Friday night, Saturday morning, docking with ISS.
Copy. We can see the image visually at the range.
What you hear, the woman talking is the
range is around
Roscosmos to NASA relay. So there's Canadarm2. They actually are going to have to grab it with the arm.
Electronic crosshairs.
Nikki Minnie. Because remember, this doesn't have the docking mechanism that'll allow it to dock directly and automatically to hard dock with the station like Crew Dragon did. It was history making since Atlantis. The Soyuzes and pretty much everything that's docked since Atlantis and now Crew Dragon, in between, they have to use the common berthing mechanism. Is there an owner of the ISS? No, it's owned by there's an agreed upon international group that manages ISS. But if you want to get particular, I mean, independent space agencies have put up particular modules that make up ISS. By the way, ISS is 20 years old. The first module was launched the year I joined the Air Force. Is there a basket gets passed around to pay for it? I don't think so.
Their range is around 2 meters.
Around 2 meters?
What kills me is the shroud. It doesn't look like... It looks very clothy on the outside of the Soyuz. It always does.
Contact is confirmed.
So contact, and then it bounced. Do you see it bounce back out?
We confirm the engaged flag and the mechanical connection flag. Docking mechanism is engaged.
And you heard it there, contact and capture. 8:01 p.m. Central Time, the International Space
Station. A little bit ahead of schedule. They weren't supposed to dock until about 9:45 Eastern.
Just west off the coast of Peru.
From page 66, copy all.
All right, so that's that one. They don't show the arm, unfortunately. But we will move on to the next one, which is the crew coming on board. We're going to actually see, this says exit full screen. So I guess that does the same thing. We'll go back to full again. I have to figure that out. This is the hatch open and egress, which happened a couple hours later.
You are looking at a live view from the International Space Station as it passes over the Pacific Ocean into an orbital nighttime 258 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean.
Again, this was Thursday night, Friday morning.
High-definition external viewing cameras on board the International Space Station looking at the Soyuz
and you can tell from the way the Earth looks that they're way past the terminus,
new crew members to
which is the night-day terminus.
Aboard. They consist of Alexei Ovchinin, the Soyuz commander from Roscosmos. He has taken the journey flanked by 2 NASA astronauts, Nick Hague and Christina Cook. And Soyuz hatch is open.
Inward opening hatch, which is also very reminiscent of the 60s. By the way, for those of you that aren't aware, an inward opening hatch is what killed the astronauts on Apollo 1. The pressure of the fire built up so much they couldn't pull the hatch in, and that was that. There's some conjecture as to if they had enough time anyway, but... I love the fact that the port has stickers for missions on it.
Space Station Commander Oleg Kononenko, Christina Cook of NASA, the first one through the hatch.
So Cook and McLean are in the Crazy Eights, the same astronaut class together.
Her first trip to the International Space Station.
Well, most people don't know this, but 3 astronauts died in space on Soyuz 11. It's just not taught in American history classes. The cabin decompressed during prep for re-entry, and the 3 astronauts were dead during their descent. Cosmonauts, I'm sorry.
Nick Hague of NASA, the next one through the hatch.
Nick Hague also in the Crazy Eights astronaut group with McLean and Cook. which is the most recent astronaut group.
Warm greeting by his Expedition 59 crewmates, and of course Soyuz commander Alexei Ovchinin bringing up the rear.
Really good that there's no important switches in that hallway for them to kick on the way down.
Station. The International Space Station crew back up to a population of 6.
All right, so that's that video. Go back here and bring it back full again for you guys. So moving past that, that was MS-12, or sorry, yeah, MS-12, Expedition 59. Like I said, it's Expedition 59 until they bring them down later on this summer. The 3 astronauts who have been up there the longest. So last Monday, this one floated around for a while. I did a write-up on it, but I wanted to go into more detail. There's going to be some pictures, no video, but an important discussion. Last week on March 11th, the Office of Management and Budget released the White House's proposal, and it's important to clarify it's a proposal. It's not the approved budget that offered $21 billion. It was an increase of $500 million over what Congress appropriated last year. The science programs at NASA would receive $6.3 billion, which is a decrease of $600 million from what they received last year. Again, it's a proposal. It's not what will happen. It's what the White House is suggesting should happen. The budget does include a few new things. One seeks $363 million to start development of large-scale lunar landers that would deliver cargo and crew. That's tied to Lunar Gateway. In parallel to that, about 4 or 5 days before the budget proposal was released, NASA made a public request to commercial companies for them to start studying the development of landers to facilitate that money as if they have it. I imagine NASA needs them anyway, regardless of what amount is allocated, whether it's $363 million or it's another amount. NASA's going to have to get some money to start developing lunar landers. But what it nullifies, and this is where people started getting wrinkly about the proposal. The first and the big one, SLS Block 1B. We're going to talk a lot more about this one. There's a lot of dominoes that fall from this specific line write-off of 1B. It focuses on completion of the current block of SLS. SLS is NASA's rocket, the big one that's supposed to launch Orion. The OMB budget said the first SLS Orion mission without a crew is now planned for early, I forgot the piece of the quote there, early 2020, which is false. It's not going to go up in 2020. The proposal offers $600 million for Europa Clipper, which is a really, really, really cool mission. It was supposed to be a flyby mission to Europa, which is one of Jupiter's moons that actually has an ocean. It's one of the 2 moons, along with Enceladus, that's thought to be potentially habitable because of the presence of water. Congress actually said, if you're going to launch Europa Clipper, we don't just want you to fly by or go into orbit. We want you to land a rover. And by 2023, they want to have a rover ready, developed, and certified, procedures built by 2023. And that seems pretty fast. But the budget proposal allocates the money for that. But to give you the spiel, Europa Clipper is an interplanetary mission in development by NASA that now comprises an orbiter set for launch in June 2023, and it's supposed to go to Europa. It was supposed to originally go and study Europa, and now it's going to drop a lander for a soft landing, supposedly. This is the one I'm not a big fan of. The budget proposal nullifies the STEM, or what used to be called the Education Office, completely defunds NASA's Education Office. It's worth noting that the last 2 years, the White House has tried to defund the Education Office, and Congress has funded it anyway. Both Republicans and Democrats have been like, nope, we're going to fund the Education Office at NASA. So, again, it's a proposal, but the White House is continuing to try to effectively remove the education component from NASA, which I don't understand. And then the other thing is WFIRST, which is the Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope. And you might remember 2 or 3 shows ago, it might have been the first course correction, where we were talking about Hubble and what is going to replace Hubble. And it's not Webb. Webb's got a different mission, but WFIRST is the next big telescope after Webb. And it would, to a degree, do Hubble's job. The White House proposal nullifies funding for WFIRST. Yeah, we don't need no buck learning, and we apparently don't need any optical telescopes that can look into space, even though Hubble is God, 20 some, almost 30 years old. But the proposal would wipe WFIRST out. Again, the last budget proposal also proposed cancellation of it, and Congress still continued to fund it. So that's where if you read a lot of space articles, there's a lot of hyperbole out there saying, oh, what's the budget mean? And a lot of them are not saying budget proposal, and they're saying this is what's going to happen. It's like, no, that's what might happen. We don't know yet. We'll talk more about what is going to happen when a budget for NASA passes both chambers of Congress. So this is the big thing that came out of this. It's the same day. Right after the budget proposal dropped and everyone started flipping through it, NASA Director Jim Bridenstine, that's how you pronounce it, Bride of Frankenstein's how I remember it, but Bridenstine appeared before the Senate Commerce Committee, and he said this, quote, SLS is struggling to meet its schedule. That's true. SLS was supposed to fly in 2017. They are currently tasked to fly in June 2020 with Orion on board, and that's probably also not going to happen. He was talking to Senator Roger Wicker from Mississippi, but the big player in NASA in the Senate is Senator Shelby from Alabama, because most of the rockets, ULA's rockets, NASA's rockets, are made in Alabama. One of the towns down there is actually called Rocket Town for how they are responsible for building so much stuff for NASA. It's also why Space Camp was built down there. He said, we now have a better understanding of how difficult this project is, and that it is going to take some additional time. Well, that's the biggest no-brainer quote. Huntsville, thank you, Riot. Huntsville, Alabama is Rocket Town, USA. So no joke, it's going to take more time to build SLS because they're already way behind schedule. And then he said, quote, I think we need, as an agency, need to stick to our commitments. And he added, if referring to the earlier plan to launch EM-1, Exploration Mission 1, that's the Orion SLS combined mission, no later than mid-2020, if we tell you and others we're going to launch in June of 2020 around the moon, which is what EM-1 is SLS plus Orion. He's kind of talking around the point that the mission is a lunar transit and return. It's supposed to be both of those two craft mated, but he didn't say it that way. We should launch around the moon in June of 2020, and I think it can be done. We need to consider, as an agency, all options to accomplish that objective. And it's the all options that started to domino into some jaw-dropping things from Jim Bridenstine. This is the bombshell. Regarding the launching of Orion spacecraft built for EM-1 on commercial vehicles, quote, it's been done before, and he said that in reference to a Delta IV Heavy that has launched Orion into space, but it was just a boilerplate service module. It did not contain the European service module, which should be attached to Orion on its way to, say, the moon or to a lunar gateway. This is the big one. Quote, there are opportunities to utilize commercial capabilities to put the Orion crew capsule and the European service module in orbit around the moon by June 2020, which was our originally stated objective. Originally stated objective was with SLS. He said, I have tasked the agency to look into how we might accomplish that objective. Now, what he's saying is, we've launched Orion on Delta IV. SLS probably not going to be ready for a June 2020 launch. NASA is going to look into using commercial lift vehicles to get Orion to the moon. Order a lunar gateway from Amazon, Dustin says. I wish it was that easy. So, here's my opinion, and I have some other people agreeing with me on this. If Orion does not launch on SLS, then SLS is dead. Not by 2020, Dustin. We're going to get into that. I'm ready for that one. Bezos can make it happen. Not by 2020, he can't. So this is Orion. This is the Orion spaceship that's supposed to connect to the European service module and fly to the lunar gateway or around the moon and beyond. SLS is the only currently engineered craft or lift vehicle that can do it. It's the only thing that's going to be able to lift the ESM, the Orion's capsule, the wet portion of the payload, which is the fully fueled payload, to get it off of Earth. It's the only thing designed to do it. I heard a lot of people talking about, well, Delta IV Heavy can do it. Or how about Falcon Heavy? Well, let's look at that. If SLS does not launch on Orion in 2020, which commercial craft can? The only four that are even in the ballpark. Dustin just mentioned Bezos in chat. That's New Glenn. New Glenn will not be ready until 2021. And then the other thing is, it doesn't meet the lift requirements. See, on the left-hand side, you'll see Orion in the ESM weighs 25 tons. The wet stage on its own weighs 30 tons. So you're talking 55-ton lift capability to get the whole thing off the ground in one launch. New Glenn can't do it.
I feel the party
Sweet Dave,
coming
what's up,
on.
man? But New Glenn simply is not designed to do it. It can't lift that much. It's not even out the door yet, Dustin, and it can't lift Orion with the ESM and its full fuel payload. The wet stage is necessary because that's the engine that's going to fire to get them to the moon. Then people started saying Falcon Heavy. Falcon Heavy can do the lift. It can definitely lift the weight. It can do 57-ton lift. The problem is that Orion is a 5-meter diameter craft at its base, and Falcon Heavy is a 3.3-meter fairing. So in order to do a lift by 2020, Falcon Heavy would have to, in the next 16 months, have the fairing built. They would have to get it on Falcon Heavy, fly it with a dummy payload like they did last year. Then they'd have to get Orion on board. They'd have to fly Orion on it, certify that, not to mention all the procedures that have to be built for that. It's not feasible to do that in 16 months. There's Delta IV Heavy. Delta IV Heavy has lifted Orion. It has not lifted Orion with the ESM and the wet stage to get them to the moon because it can't. It can't lift all that weight. If the government got on board and gave SpaceX $1 billion or something, it might be possible. Yeah, but they would have to say, by the way, SpaceX, stop. Stop all work on Starhopper and Starship. They would have to say, this is your focus now. We're paying you to do nothing but get this off the ground by next year. And then maybe if they work 24/7, they might get it done. But it's just not possible. And the other craft is Vulcan Centaur Heavy, which again, not ready till 2021. So to meet the 2020 deadline, June, mid-2020 deadline, none of these craft are going to get it done. This is what the Lunar Gateway looks like. Orion's the crew ferry. So if you look over here, solid shirt, man, it's not a shirt. It's a full flight suit, homie. But anyway, this is Lunar Gateway. The butt end over here is Orion and the ESM. Orion is developed to meet with the multi-purpose module. I do love this suit, man. I'm so happy about it. But Orion is supposed to be the craft that meets with the multi-purpose module. The problem with making changes with all of this is the craft that has to dock with the multi-purpose module. They can't change Orion. Orion's way too far down the drawing board. It's flown. It has not flown with crew, but it's flown. They can't start changing plans for a lunar space station effectively 9 years before it's supposed to be done because they don't have a rocket that can get it there. So they're in a catch-22. How do we get Orion and the ESM and crew and a wet stage off the ground and still build everything to spec at Lunar Gateway? So, if we go down this road where we've talked about all these heavy lift vehicles cannot get Orion crewed with a wet stage and the ESM in one launch, it would require 2 launches. One launch of a uncrewed Orion, ESM, and a fueled upper stage. What rocket can do that? Only one. We covered it. Which rocket is it? Do we have any of the lunar modules ready to deploy? No, not yet. But there's one rocket that can do the lift right now. It's 57 tons, and Falcon Heavy is the only thing that can do it. And then you have to launch an individual rocket to get a crew into space, because Orion, by that time, in that configuration, there's no way they certify it for crewed flight. There's no way they get Falcon Heavy turned around with a 3.3 to 5 meter adapter that can hold Orion, get it certified for crewed flight by June. So the only way they get this done is to launch Orion into space by itself, nobody on board, with the ESM and the wet stage, and then they launch a separate rocket, probably with a Crew Dragon, because it's the only, we're going to talk about that later, but it's the only close to certified human-rated craft that NASA has access to, and then you still run into a problem.
Well,
it's the bottom bullet point right here. No craft currently available can dock with Orion in orbit, per Bridenstine. So even if they got the Crew Dragon 2 up there, they don't dock. They're not made to dock to each other. So if we go down this road, they'd have to spacewalk into Orion. That is the only way that this is feasible. Either we go with SLS on a delay, or they have to do all this. So, just to go over the other bullet points are there. Another reason Delta Heavy can't do it, one, it can't carry the weight of the wet stage and everything else, but it also has only flown Orion, not the ESM. Yeah, that sounds like a long shot. It's a pretty big long shot. But SpaceX Falcon Heavy's big thing, if SpaceX Falcon Heavy was engineered at 5 meters, this could probably be done. It's the fairing that's the problem. Because, and I'll get to that, I have one source now that talks to me from SpaceX, believe it or not. And I talked to this person about it, and they shook their head at me, and it's like, no way is this done by 2020. I have a quote for them I'm going to put up in a few slides. Here's the other problem with Delta 4, though, and this I got from Interplanetary Podcast, is that there's no Falcon 4 Heavy slated for this mission, right? And ULA is a commercial company. So what NASA would be asking is for them to stand up a Delta 4 Heavy. The problem is it takes 36 months to make one. So they either bump, this is if they just launched everything but the wet stage, and they're still not going to do that, but they would still need to bump a commercial client to do what NASA wants. Now they might do that, but it still leads to a situation where, what, they're going to put Crew Dragon with a wet stage up? That needs engineering too. Yeah. I actually didn't learn that until this morning, right? The lead time for a Delta 4 Heavy. Not to mention Delta 4 is going away. There's no incentive for them to build a whole bunch more Delta 4s because Delta 4 is about to be replaced by ULA. So that's it. None of this on a commercial craft none of this that's done on a commercial craft is readily available by July 2020. End of June, July 1, 2020. None of it. So to me, it was a test balloon. He was basically saying, hey, the future may be this, but there's no way. One, like I said, if Orion flies with ESM and a wet stage intending to go to the moon, and it's not on SLS, SLS is dead. And SLS is like the Senate's baby. It's definitely Senator Shelby's baby. I don't think they allow it to die. And there's no feasible way for a commercial launch to get it done. EM1 has to get pushed back for SLS, says Riot in the chat, and that is the only answer. That is the only feasible answer from an engineering standpoint, from a safety standpoint. Thank you for following along with all that. Hopefully I presented it in a way that was no nonsense. I'm not trying to say anyone's better than anyone else at it. These are just the facts. You just can't get Orion in the configuration it needs to be in with the crew in space by mid-year next year.
Rise up and join the fight.
Hercules gets the title of Hang Around. Thanks for hanging around, man. So this is from my one and only source inside SpaceX. This is in reference to, can you launch Orion on Falcon Heavy? Quote, it already went off the table once. You'd basically have to rebuild and reaccomplish certification. That's it. They've thought about it.
You will endure this loss and learn from it.
SpaceX as a company has taken a look at it. Can we launch Orion? And walked away from it. So the one vehicle that has the tonnage lift capability, they're not interested. They're not going to do it. So the biggest problem with commercial launch of Orion is nothing's engineered. Nothing. It's a theory that got floated with a 16-month deadline, and this is not the 60s. No procedures are written, no parts are made, and it's 16 months from July 2020. It's not feasible. Like I said, he may have just floated a test balloon for interest, knowing it was pie in the sky to do anything but SLS, and if he did, that's some brilliance, because it sends a signal to the Senate that says, yeah, I'm open to everything, even though I'm really not. I mean, you guys can talk all you want here in the Senate committee room, but we'll go back to reality where we understand the engineering. Because some of the questions they asked in that committee hearing were off the wall. It was just like, do you guys actually know what NASA does? And then it sends a signal to the commercial developers that says, it's a matter of time before we will be asking you to build craft to mate with our systems. Not just develop, we're going to develop probes. We're going to develop crewed capsules. We're going to develop systems like Orion, and we're going to need you to be partners in a much earlier stage. And I really think that's what he was doing. I know. And Congress is the opposite of progress also, by the way. But anyway, that's SLS. I believe SLS is in serious trouble, but I also believe Riot's correct. EM1 must be pushed back. It must fly on SLS. And that possibly pushes back the whole boots on the ground on the moon by 2028. It's reality. I would love to have that happen, but it's just not within the engineering that's currently available. But anyway, Lunar Gateway. So we showed a picture of Lunar Gateway, and we're going to segue into Lunar Gateway because Orion's so closely tied to the concept. The International Space Station Partners, which is the group Dustin previously asked about, who manages and owns, no one. They worked on it together. And they've endorsed the picture, that plan, and all the engineering behind it for the development of the Gateway. It's an outpost around the moon that will act as a base to support robots and astronauts going down to the lunar surface and coming back up. And that incorporates NASA, Roscosmos, ESA, Canada, and JAXA. Those are the agencies that are involved in ISS right now, and those are the agencies that would be involved in a Lunar Gateway. Yeah, maybe, but I don't think the moon's their goal. In chat, Riot says, I think SpaceX will have boots on the ground on the moon soon after BFR is ready. BFR is also Starship. I like BFR because I know what it stands for in everyone's head, but I don't think that's where they're going. I think they have bigger things in sight. Musk's stated goal is Mars. So we'll see. We'll see if they bypass it. They're not building for the moon, that's for sure. Hopper is maybe being built for the moon. And they started tests on Starship and Hopper. They also applied for licenses to build in both in Texas and Florida. So we'll see. I'll have more on that next week, just because it wasn't a developed enough story to bring you any specific details. It was all hearsay and photos, and I was like, that's probably not enough, because it just broke today. Yeah, short-term money will be moon. That's a fair point, that short-term money for SpaceX will be to the moon. I think that they also will break into their own commercial manned flight market sooner than people think, and that they will generate significant money from people that want to fly a capsule and not on Virgin Galactic. But we'll see. I think that's a moneymaker for them. But again, it depends. If they put 7 bodies in and it costs $45 million to launch Crew Dragon on Falcon 9, then how much is that? A lot of money. But people will pay it if they have it. But just totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, Falcon 9, while it was in my head. There was some whispers, and this is not
those
confirmed.
Without the stomach for this place must move on.
But Falcon 9 has essentially stopped S2 recoverability development, meaning they're moving on. They can recover the S1, but they're not going to try to recover the S2 anymore. So the Block 5 is the last time they were in development for that. I would imagine the next block of Falcon 9 is just going to move on. Why did you not go to the next one? There we go. Yeah, but is it the gas station going to be an Arco or an Exxon? Probably a Sheetz. Yeah, get an MTO sub. Sheetz is a Western Pennsylvania thing. All right, but here's the question from Dustin. Space Force. What is Space Force? Apparently, Catbot is turned back on. I need to turn it off. That's kind of dumb. It shouldn't be on. I think Zambo is getting killed by Catbot in chat for the mods that can see it. But Space Force. Again, this was a question submitted by a viewer. Anyone watching the VOD, anyone watching now, you have something you want me to talk about, research, look into, just drop it in BOSA channel and I will do it. I would much rather have questions that you want answered be a part of this conversation. So Space Force. So the top is a mission statement. The United States Space Force, USSF, was, and I am saying was at this point, the proposed space warfare service branch of the United States Armed Forces. It was originally intended to have its own chief of staff, which was sat on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it was intended to have control over military space operations. It would be the 6th branch of the U.S. Armed Forces and the 8th American Uniformed Service. It was later decided to fold Space Force into the Air Force, much like the United States Marine Corps is a part of the United States Navy. So there are a couple of things in this description that give me the willies. Space Warfare Service. I'll start there. What that means to me is we have satellites up there right now, right? Spy satellites. We have satellites that do imaging. You know, we can look at troops on the ground. We have satellites that carry, you know, radio signals from forward operations over the horizon back to Langley and Fort Meade. And those are not warfare to me. Those are support, but they're not doing war operations. What warfare service means to me is like having platforms that can launch missiles and take down other people's satellites if we want to cripple their ability to do their spying, or we want to cripple someone else's competing GPS system, or we want to have a laser that zaps people from orbit. It takes us into a really slippery slope of what I believe the notion, at least at the political level, is envisioned as. So let's talk about what makes space versus not space. The Kármán line is an attempt to define the boundary between Earth, the atmosphere, and outer space at 100 kilometers. It's important for legal and regulatory measures to have some sort of definition because aircraft and spacecraft fall under different jurisdictions. So the world does not generally or universally accept the Kármán line. It's what I accept. Most people, if you say, did they go into space? Are they astronauts now? Did they travel into space? Most people are going to reference the Kármán line. They're going to say, well, did it go over 100 kilometers? But in general, aircraft that are flying over a country are in that country's airspace. If you're past whatever line that country recognizes as space, you are now under the subject of international maritime laws. Keep my crazy ideas to myself, says Doc. So it's important because international maritime laws are what we abide by in international waters. We abide by that. Piracy laws are in effect there. Salvage rights are in effect there. And there's general understood cooperation between nations in international waters. And it's kind of the same international airspace, except that aircraft that are in distress in international airspace tend to end up in international waters. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that Mount Everest is in the troposphere, and it's only 20 kilometers up. And you get into the stratosphere, which is where weather balloons tend to go. We can talk about it off stream. Meteors are asteroids become meteors in the mesosphere at about 85 kilometers, because that's about the point they start running into thick enough air to burn them. And then 100 kilometers is the Kármán line. The shuttle was at 690 kilometers, to put that into scope. And then the exosphere, the absolute limit of Earth's atmosphere, is actually 10,000 kilometers. So how did we come up with this boundary? What is the Kármán line? How do we establish this? It's relatively simple. When you use air to provide lift, or an atmosphere to provide lift to your craft, you're flying an aircraft. When that is no longer the mechanism of making your craft go up or down, and you're in a vacuum where air is not available for control surfaces, you are now in space. The definition of what is space can vary greatly on the craft, because there's a degree to which, say, the X-15 could actually fly up into the upper mesosphere. And then when did it become a spacecraft? Because people who have seen First Man know this, but Neil Armstrong and other X-15 pilots actually went up so high that they started bouncing off the mesosphere, and they had to tilt their aircraft to the right to kill the lift that they were generating from that bounce and come back down into the atmosphere. So the Air Force, the United States Air Force, which is important because this is where Space Force would reside, it says anybody that's over 80 kilometers from mean sea level, so the average sea level worldwide, if you're 80 kilometers above that, you are in space. There's another definition that's proposed in international law discussions that defines the lower boundary of space as the lowest perigee, which is the lowest point of the elliptical orbit attainable by an orbiting spacecraft, but it does not specify an altitude. So due to atmospheric drag, the lowest altitude at which an object in circular orbit can complete at least one full revolution without propulsion is about 150 kilometers, which would significantly raise the Kármán line. I still like the Kármán line because you're not flying an airplane at 100 kilometers. I think it's a fair definition to say airplanes fly on air, spacecraft don't. But what's going on really? In short, Space Force would be responsible for, this is from their own statement, space support to land, air, naval, and cyber forces. But what's that mean? To me, it means something very dangerous. It's the militarization of space, as I was describing earlier. We're talking about using space capability to conduct direct warfare operations. And when we do that, it runs counter to the cooperative ambition of what space is. International Space Station is emblematic of that cooperation. We've had trouble with Russia because of the Ukraine, and whatever you think of that, put that aside. When we had people, when Russia annexed the Crimea, which is part of Ukraine, we had U.S. astronauts in Russia, and it was unaffected. All the political and military brouhaha that blew up around that, we never had to really fear that our astronauts would become hostages because we couldn't get them out of Russia, or worst case, we had them on the ISS at a time that the United States had no capability to get them back on our own. We were completely dependent on Roscosmos to put astronauts up and get them home. And the idea that we would compromise that neutrality of space to produce a military force that's predicated on leveraging space for operations is extremely dangerous. It's long been held that space is neutral, that you get above that line and it's neutral ground, that the nonsense that happens on Earth and the mire we get mucked in sometimes does not apply once you're out of the atmosphere. Is this an old idea that predates the current administration? Which idea? The neutrality of space or Space Force? Which one? That's new. It's Space Force was a campaign initiative of our current president. It was nothing. There's two sides of this coin politically. Space is generally funded well by Republicans. It's generally defunded by Democrats simply because they want to spend the money on more immediate concerns on Earth and our country, versus seeing that none of that's going to matter, because eventually it matters, but long term it's not feasible that we don't explore space and develop the capability to leave this planet. Yeah, but that's why it exists. Making Space Force a reality, and I'll say this, I'm former Air Force, and part of my job was SATCOM wideband communications. I dealt with a lot of people that deal with U.S. Space Command, which we have. We have United States Space Command, which is an Air Force branch, so it's redundant to me, except for the fact that U.S. Space Command is passive. It does passive things in space. It simply runs satellites and runs data. It does not enable direct engagement from space. And that is the difference. That is what Space Force would do. But the people that I still talk to who are still in the military, who have run in the circles I used to run in, they're all shaking their head, going, essentially, if the current president's not reelected in 2 years, this probably dies. But the longer the ball rolls, the more dangerous it becomes. But the price tag's a lot steeper than everyone thought. I think the original proposal was like $8 billion. It's going to cost nearly double that to get it up and running. Not to mention its annual funding. And then it still bears the question, what do you have that's space weapon ready? Even if we go down this road. And I mean, I don't know. I would almost be sure that the United States Air Force has a single stage takeoff and landing. That's what SSTO means. This shuttle technically was not an SSTO, but I'll guarantee you that this Air Force either has or has in development some sort of militarized SSTO. That's complete conspiracy conjecture from me, but it would shock me if they or DARPA do not have something like that in the works. But anyway. Yeah, well, those people were... So Dustin says this, I have heard people say we have lasers in space now, and the government started fires in California with them. Well, I mean, Pacific Gas and Electric has started the fires with bad equipment, and that's been proven, and they've taken responsibility. Conspiracy theories aside, did I answer your question? I was really... Yeah, Project Star Wars was awesome in the 80s, but did I answer your question? I was really striving to hit the details that you're probably looking for. Okay. So, bearish sheet. This is... Oh, you're welcome, Dustin. It's a good question. I know that talking about politics can be sketchy ground in a stream, but this is an informational broadcast. Thank you very much, Mads. Mads is telling me it's time to take a break, everybody. So we will come back to bear sheet when I get back from a break. You guys do the same thing. Get a drink, go to the bathroom, stretch your legs, and I will be right back. All right, I'm back. So, thank you all for hanging out. We'll get back to Bear Sheet here in just a second. Give everybody a minute or a second or two to sit their butts back down if they hear my voice. But up on the board, hey, just about an hour. Hey, right on the nose, Mads. Good job. Got a few more things to go over, but I wanted to go back to Bear Sheet. Bear Sheet, and I'll show this again because I'm really proud of the fact that I obtained this. This is the mission patch from New Santara Satu. That is the SpaceX rideshare mission that Bear Sheet launched on. It was the very first launch we all watched together. It's not a milestone mission for SpaceX, but it's a milestone mission for me because it was the first launch that I watched with friends in a long, long time. So the idea that that mission was all of us coming together and starting what we're doing now is super cool to me. And so I went out and found the patch. Someone was eBaying theirs, and I picked it up. But back to Bear Sheet. Yay! So last time we talked about Bear Sheet, we talked about its position, and the links here. It's gonna be. I'm gonna present or put this slide deck in the notes on YouTube and on the website. You can get them commercially, but let's frame that. I'm trying to get a Crew Dragon patch because that is a significant milestone mission. If you go on eBay and try to find those patches, they are about $95 right now. I'm willing to pay about $15, $20 for a SpaceX mission patch. There are museums that will get them in stock and sell them, but they tend to sell out fast. It's a matter of you either have to get lucky or you have to wait until SpaceX releases their annual patch package and probably has patches in there you may not want so much. And those run like $65, $70 for the whole package. But Bear Sheet. The last time we talked about Space IL's Bear Sheet, which is the first commercial lander that has not yet landed on the moon, we were discussing a computer glitch that caused it to fail to do its first burn. And now it has done its second burn. It is back on schedule, back on course, and it is about 1/3 of the distance to the moon in apogee, meaning height of its ellipse from Earth. We can take a look at where it is. So I still have this linked and brought up for everybody. So Bear Sheet is right here. They're actually tracking New Santara Satu now. Cool, so we can look at that too. But this ellipse right here, that's the booster stage from the liftoff. Bear Sheet's actually right here right now. It's gotten significantly farther away from Earth since the last time we looked at it. Now, the moon's not in the perspective here because this is stuff in space around Earth. But when we get close to Bear Sheet doing its moon stuff, especially its lunar injection burn, meaning it's going to place itself into lunar orbit, and it's actually going to place itself in the lunar orbit and then shrink that orbit and shrink that orbit and shrink that orbit and then land or make an attempt to soft land. But I always welcome in Gilly, the king of ice skating in Super Mario Odyssey. How'd you get on with the rest of that, my friend? I know that you had moved on to I think the Seaside Kingdom whenever I left your stream tonight. But welcome in. We're talking about Bear Sheet.
I got another mission for you if you're ready.
We already talked about SLS and the budget and what it means. There's a lot of, I believe, good information, solid, grounded facts in that discussion. But those of you coming in, hi, hello. My name's Fixer. For those of you who don't know me, and I do space stuff. Right now, we're doing a weekly show called Course Correction, where we talk about the week in space. And currently, we're discussing Bear Sheet, which is the first lunar lander that's been built by a commercial company called Space IL. It launched on the New Santara Satu Falcon 9 mission back at the end of February. And we're currently looking at stuff in space, and we can see how far away from Earth it is. It is right there. But going back to this, which means I have to exit and come back in. This photo on the left was taken from Bear Sheet looking back at Earth, and there's actually a sign on the lander that says "Small Country, Big Dreams." And I still consider Bear Sheet to be BOSA's baby because we watched it launch in our first gathering together. We've tracked it pretty much every time we've had a discussion where we've done a launch or we've done a course correction episode. So I really want to keep telling you guys what's going on with it, where it is, because that day it lands on the moon, I think is going to be a really special day for all of us. But that's what's going on with Bear Sheet. We'll keep pinging Bear Sheet, say, hey, where are you? Don't forget, We're not too far away from when it was originally supposed to enter lunar orbit, which was early April. We're coming up on that really quick. So expect more information on Beresheet to flow as they get closer. Poor Opportunity. Opportunity was declared a complete mission back in February. NASA had lost contact with it midpoint of June 2018. They had basically stopped trying to send it commands and then made one more attempt in early 2019. The reason they lost contact with Opportunity was because of a global sandstorm on Mars. They believe either damaged the craft or covered the solar panels up during the storm so badly that the batteries lost charge and they can't be recharged. But Opportunity is a statement to how well made things at NASA are. It was originally supposed to be like a 3-month mission, and it was up there for like 15 years doing work, doing science. But this is the last shot Opportunity took of Mars. It is using its panoramic camera, and it does just like you saw in The Martian. If you watch that movie, it takes a picture, 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 and then puts them all together in a mosaic. And this was the very last piece of data that NASA was able to get from Opportunity, this photo. So it kind of signifies either this is likely its final resting place. I know people that follow space have an emotional attachment to Opportunity given how long it's been up there, but I mean, InSight's brand new. It's not been up there very long, and we still have Curiosity. Plus, you know, we might be going to Mars soon with other cool stuff. I know that's still SpaceX's goal. So I wanted to show it to you because Opportunity did a lot of work for a lot longer than anyone thought, and it deserved to have its last picture put in front of people. So last Friday night, we tried to watch the WGS-10 launch, but due to multiple issues in the pad and with NASA's tracking system, the launch slipped from 6:56 p.m. past my personal hard stop time of 8 p.m. I had another commitment that night. Ash was awesome and brought me food, effectively, and it was date night. So about 25 minutes after we called the stream, they resolved everything. The first issue was the stage 1 helium tank had a problem. The stage 2, and they had to do stuff with cross feeds and readdressing how the fuel lines were actually being like valved and routed. There was a problem with the S2 LOX tank riding over pressure, and I don't know how they resolved it, but they resolved it. And now TDRS, which is NASA's downrange tracking system, had a problem once they resolved those issues. And then once TDRS was resolved, they launched. And as promised, I wanted to show you guys that launch.
And checklist is complete, so stand engineer and proceed with MST tracking and roll to front position. Roger.
One of the last Delta IV 4 booster configs that will ever fly, taking WGS-10, which is the next generation of DoD communication satellites, the last one into space. Replaces the old Discus 3 birds that I actually used to work on. Yeah, sweet. The video shows the slick building moving back. I think that's so cool. As Doc correctly stated on Friday night, that is a mobile workshop. It's a tool shed that moves up to the rocket so they can work on it right up until launch, and then it backs off.
Status check. Go Delta. Go WGS-10.
3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff.
And there she went.
United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying the WGS-10 mission for the United States Air Force.
It gives me chills even though it's on replay.
Burnout on all 4 SRM, standing by for jetting.
The only rocket launches you have ever seen as a bottle rocket will be here Thursday, Drakadai. We're going to watch one go up.
Continuing to perform well, chamber pressure looks good. Standing by for payload bearing jettison. And we have good indication of payload bearing jettison.
That right there is a nozzle extension. Watch how it doesn't completely fall away from the craft. It comes down the nozzle and then holds. And ULA, that's who put it up. Yeah, copyright them. So moving back into that, I did want to show you the launch. We watched everything but the launch, and I do apologize for that again. It's just a matter of timing. I mean, that launch slipped almost an hour, and their window was closing at 9:15. I really didn't think it was going up. So I wanted to be sure that I showed you guys the launch because we didn't actually get to watch it to its completion. So this is the thing Dustin will be geeked about. OSIRIS-REx. What is OSIRIS-REx? Oh, well, I'm sorry you had to do that, or whatever the circumstances were, Drakadai. But, man, hang out. This is what I do now. Thanks to the encouragement of my community and other people, I have continued to push forward with basically presenting a stream that we can all come around, be amazed by, learn some things from, and I'm more than happy to field questions and research the ones I don't know the answer to and bring those answers back because I learned something in the process. OSIRIS-REx, though, we talked about on last course correction, we talked about Hayabusa 2 and how it's going, or how it has landed on Ryugu, and it has actually has changed its profile a little bit. It's canceled one of its mission or one of its lands because it believes it can get all of its work done in fewer hits to the asteroid. But OSIRIS-REx is NASA doing basically the same thing. It wants to land on Bennu and get 60 grams of material and bring it back to Earth for a detailed analysis. So the graphic on the right is from the OSIRIS-REx program, and it's current as of today. So it's 84.3 million kilometers from Earth, and it takes communications, if they were done at the speed of light, 9.3 minutes. So light from OSIRIS-REx to Earth and back takes 9.3 minutes. It takes a little bit longer for communications. I think the communications delay one way is about 8 minutes. So it's about a 16-minute round trip to give it commands. But where is it? Where is OSIRIS-REx? Here's Earth. It's actually a near-Earth asteroid. It's nearer than Ryugu. And it launched last September. It arrived where it was supposed to be on its orbit on December 3rd near Stegosaurus. And it started its detailed survey, meaning it started taking pictures of where it wants to land on February 28th. It's actually really, really close to Bennu right now, which is why I'm starting to talk about it, because it seemed like asteroid landing was something that you guys are interested in. And OSIRIS-REx is not one of those programs it gets attention in space circles. It doesn't get attention in news circles. So this is where it is as of right now. You can see that it is 84.5 million kilometers from Earth. It's only 5.5 kilometers from Bennu. It is amazing, man. And it has traveled 2.3 billion kilometers. And the window for sample collection opens in 473 days. So it's really close, right? And it's still going to be over a year before it lands on it, because it's surveying it, and it needs to make sure that its trajectory and Osiris's trajectory are correct before it attempts to land. So you still have enough, you have a lot of time before this thing actually touches down. So you're talking, maybe around summertime or a little bit later next year is when they're going to try to land on it. And we're going to come back to OSIRIS-REx when there's news. But the one thing I wanted to show you was this. This is a photo it's already taken. This is what OSIRIS-REx is currently doing with its cameras. It's taking a look at the surface of Bennu. And this is an actual photo of the asteroid that OSIRIS-REx has taken. And you can see, and this is one of the things that I found interesting about Ryugu as well, is that when you think asteroid, you think rock, right? You think this big boulder. But the surface looks granular. It looks like there's a lot of dust. Was Rex designed for their purpose? No, it was designed to do this. It was NASA's Hayabusa mission, for lack of a better way to describe it. But the surface looks really, like it says in the description, it looks really crumbly. There's some definite smooth areas, but there's some definite angular pieces of rock sticking up. Yeah, and that's actually a good point, Mads. The reason Bennu was selected is it's a carbonate asteroid, meaning it's likely is crumbly. The weird thing is that if it's crumbly, that means that its own mass is keeping those bits of dust gravity attracted to itself. It's going to take another force to blow those off. And you saw when Hayabusa 2 lifted off Ryugu for the first time, you saw that dust go fly everywhere. And whenever Osiris lands, I anticipate seeing the same sort of thing. That there will be... I can't wait to know what it's made of. Me either. I mean, obviously carbon's going to be in the mix. It's one of the reasons it was selected. They could tell from long range looks at it with laser and radio telescopes that composition was a lot of carbon, but it's not the only thing there. So Doc says, I can't wait to know what it is made of. Me either. I'm superiorly curious. This was taken from its map cam on February 27th. We won't know probably for another 3 years what it's made of, assuming OSIRIS-REx lands, collects the sample required, brings it back, and then they tell us about it. But we will continue to follow OSIRIS-REx as there is information on it. I think that talking about Hayabusa 2 and OSIRIS-REx is cool because it's cool space stuff that no one really talks about. I mean, you have to go outside of the U.S. media market to find any information on this. That's unobtainium, says Dustin, is what it's made of. But just go outside of space circles, outside of NASA. You have to go outside of U.S. media news sources to find information on it. Vibranium, that'd be cool too. Crew Dragon, I told you we talk about it. That's the best picture I can give you, and that's public domain photo of Crew Dragon on the back of the recovery ship. As was correctly indicated to me last time we talked about Crew Dragon, all of that scorch on the side is not burn. That's ablator. That's the ablator coming off the heat shield and it effectively painting itself up onto the fuselage. Now, everyone expected, apparently, NASA and SpaceX expected there to be problems. They thought there would be anomalies. They didn't think it would be, for lack of a way to say it, as good as it was. And again, the only real problem that anyone noted was that there was a onboard by 60 minutes timeline that NASA has to get the crew off and onto the ship, and it took SpaceX 67 minutes to get the capsule onto the ship. Now, they have, and I believe them, they said they can shave that easily. I also think that with the number of watercraft in the area, and if they had to, they could have gotten an astronaut out of that capsule in about 5 minutes and put them on the back of a Ski-Doo and got them to the boat. That said, this is from Deputy Commercial Crew Program Manager Steve Stitch. He said, the vehicle really did better than NASA expected. It's a little bit sleight of hand, saying NASA's expectations were exceeded. Maybe saying SpaceX had different expectations. I don't know. But for all intents and purposes, Crew Dragon blew it out of the water. And that's why I was saying earlier when we were talking about SLS that the only U.S. launched capable craft that can carry crew is Crew Dragon. It's not certified yet. That is simply a matter of time now. This will fly this year and put astronauts into space from the United States. And that's a big deal. For the same reasons I was talking about before. We want to crew Orion. Maybe this is how we do it if SLS eventually does get scrapped, which I don't think. But we also talk about Space Force and how it's, how there's a political danger to that. How relying on another nation to transport your astronauts can be used as a political tool in the event that space gets weaponized. So it's important for that avenue as well. But anyway, Crew Dragon did awesome. We are looking at probably late summer, early fall. The original early summer profile that everyone talked about, it's been universally shot down by SpaceX saying that's just not feasible. They still have an abort test to do, which is supposed to happen, I believe, April to May, somewhere in there. SpaceX has got a busy April coming up. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But Crew Dragon will fly at least 2 more times this year, one uncrewed. This exact same capsule will be used for the abort test, along with the S1 booster from Nusantara Satu. So craft we've already seen flown together will be put together for that abort test. And obviously when they run that, if it's at an amicable time for me to stream it, I will obviously stream it. Unobtainium, isn't that from the core? That's I think that's astronium is the astroneer from the core material, Gilly. So, course correction on the web. And we're getting ready to wrap up here. We've been going for almost an hour and 15, 20 minutes. So first things first, that web address, coursecorrection.space. If you don't feel like dealing with a YouTube page and looking at a playlist, like I post all of these to a single playlist called BOSA, I put all of the videos up on coursecorrection.space. I also am doing write-ups there. I did a write-up on SLS in my initial fact-finding days after the budget proposal dropped. I am looking for other people that are space nerds that are interested in producing well-researched write-ups or multimedia content. I mean, if you're doing something awesome in Kerbal Space Program, have a video and want to put it up there, let's do that. Nope, it's unobtainium, a substance which can take unimaginable pressure temp and convert it to energy, an impossible substance. Yeah, that's a fair description. But if you're interested and you can put together a well-researched write-up, talk to me, hit me up, and we'll talk about giving you access to the back end of the website for you to produce your own articles and stuff. But if you just want to see the write-ups, I also have the Nixer channel embedded there. There's also a link to the Discord there, and all the videos are placed there. And there's a nice timeline that just shows you when things get posted. Past that, upcoming launches. This week, there is a DARPA launch. Originally, I had planned to cover it, but we're getting close to that date, and it's still not a confirmed launch. And what that means is DARPA and the company launching it, Electron, have not confirmed they're doing the launch yet. Now, I'm assuming that has a lot to do with it being DARPA, and they probably don't want to confirm it's going to be launched. It's a New Zealand launch. It's scheduled right now. The last piece of information anyone has on it says this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Something classified. Absolutely. But also on Thursday at 9:50 p.m. is Vega Prisma. Prisma is an Italian vehicle. Vega's the small Arianespace rocket. The launch is confirmed, so we are going to cover that one. It will be from French Guiana, I believe. I have to double check that, but I believe it's either from French Guiana or Kourou. We will start the stream at about 9 p.m. We'll go over what's going on with that mission then. And then we'll watch it together, assuming I don't have any plans Thursday night, so I'll probably stay up late if it's held, as long as their launch window holds. But it might be an instantaneous launch window, which means any hold kills it. We'll see. But plan on being here Thursday night, 9 p.m., and we'll watch Vega launch Prisma. And Doc will be here for part of it, and then you can catch the rest of it on the VOD. The big one everyone wants to talk about, Falcon Heavy. Falcon Heavy's first commercial payload currently has a net, means no earlier than April 7th at 6 p.m. I expect this to shift. SpaceX really wants to launch it at that day, on that day, at that time, apparently. I've seen a lot of chatter that says that's the day. So that's a Sunday. Sunday at 6 p.m. works out really well for me for a Falcon Heavy launch. So if that date holds, we're going to have a party around Falcon Heavy. That's going to be awesome. We're going to watch last year's Falcon Heavy. We'll probably talk about why Falcon Heavy can't launch SLS again. But that's coming up. That's the one probably on my calendar I'm looking the most forward to right now in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But if you want to see Falcon Heavy go up, I would circle that date in pencil right now. There will be a stream, assuming that date holds, obviously. And we'll start hyping ourselves up for Falcon Heavy as we get closer. So, is there anything I talked about that you guys didn't get enough of or unclear about? I actually was listening to an ESA administrator who worked on he worked on Rosetta, but he worked on another project, and he had a message for people that are interested in space, both young and old. Can I start at the top and repeat all that? And that's why there's a video, man. I'm recording the whole thing. But he said people take too much pride in not needing to ask questions, and mistakes are the best learning tool. And I agree with that. And I'm by no means an authority on any of this stuff. I dig into it. I research it. I put together pieces I can find. I do my best to answer things. But if I don't cover something completely, I want you guys to ask. Because there's absolutely no shame in not knowing something. I've been corrected, I believe, in every single stream I've done on this at least once, and that's good. Because I would rather the fact come out versus me guessing at something or thinking I had it right. So if you have a question on anything I've talked about tonight, please say something, and we'll talk about it some more. If something comes up, or you're watching the VOD, and you say, oh man, or I really would like him to talk about this, or he didn't answer this aspect of this question I had on this topic, there's the Discord link. It's discord.me/BTO. That'll get you in there. Just be 18 or older. We do have some, that's where the line is on the teen to adult thing. All right, Gilly, have a good night, man. I am wrapping up, but thanks for hanging out. Thanks for bringing over your crew. I really appreciate it. Sleep well. Thanks, Matt, for putting the Discord link in chat. But if something comes up, or you see something in space news in between launches or in between Mondays, post it in the BOSA channel, and I will do my best, just like I did with Space Force today, to present an objective assessment of what's going on. I have my personal opinion on Space Force, but I tried to keep it out of it as much as I could. I really try to present facts about how space versus airspace is defined and how it can be dangerous to weaponize space in a context of facts. And I'll try to do that with everything that you guys bring me that may be along those lines. But in any event, yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. I actually, a little bit shorter than I thought it was going to be considering the amount of content I had, but we didn't have as many questions as we had last time. Course correction will be every Monday, whether we have a launch or not, in between at 7 p.m. I am going to do my best to present in this format from now on with the slides and the text on the screen and the links embedded so I can share this slide presentation in the notes of the show as I post it. If we have a launch on a Monday, then we'll likely have a larger pregame show that is course correction leading into that launch, but it depends on its timing. So that's that. We've been going for an hour and 25 minutes, which is a fair amount of time. I'm trying to also keep the show in line with the notion that someone doesn't want to watch a 4-hour webcast on space. About an hour and a half is the reasonable limit for that kind of content. So if you haven't hit the follow button and you like what you've seen here tonight, my endeavor, but what if you do? Well, then I need to play video games more. And I actually am doing that tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we will be playing Satisfactory. It goes into early access tomorrow. It is a space-related game. I have been looking forward to it, and it goes available to me on the Epic Game Store tomorrow. So I will be playing that tomorrow night at 7 p.m., barring any problem. But outside of that, seriously, guys, thanks for being here. We do this every Monday, and we will show every launch that I kind of forecast on the schedule. If you want to know where we sit on launches, the best place to get that information is the schedule channel of the Big Top Outlaws Discord. I do my best to update that every morning on weekdays and as launch information changes. Sometimes it changes 10 minutes before a show, like it did Friday when the launch for Delta 4 slipped by like 12 minutes or something like that. But seriously, thanks for being here, everybody. Let's see who's out there for me to host. I really hope you guys enjoy these because I am enjoying doing the research, putting them together. And as long as we are still having fun doing it, I will always continue to do it. I know Toofy is playing Division 2, so we're going to go drop a host on Toofy. So let me get out of here. Let's go find Toofy. And we'll go say hello to him. I know he was having problems getting into the game earlier, but last time I checked, he was playing. So let's see. Daisy, Toofy, Tipsy. We've actually hosted Toofy a ton lately. J Mitch is playing Clone Hero. He's a little bit over the top. Let's go to Tipsy. I have not hosted Tipsy in a long time, so let's take it over to Tipsy Roo. He's playing indie games. Mount Your Friends is what he's playing. So we'll go play that with him. Mads, you're always welcome. Feedback, as always, appreciated. And again, thanks, guys. You guys have a great night. And I will talk to you in Discord, and I will see you tomorrow night for Satisfactory. Have a great night, everybody.